Hello everyone! In this video I'm going to talk about a few of the examples that I have posted on our Canvas site for Project 1, Harmonizing the Elements, Part 2, the Conceptual Design and Presentation part of the project. So the first project that you'll see on my screen here is showing the completed final project. So this board in the upper left-hand corner is the mood board from part 1 that this student chose. The other 3 boards are new from this part of the project. So right away, keep in mind that you will be turning in 4 boards. So you'll be turning in your mood board again. Remember, you do have the opportunity to update after our critique. So it's going to be very important that when you get your assigned client, that you analyze the client and their needs for the space, that you developed that client a little more, determine where they live, the type of building and all that. And while doing that, you're going to select the best mood board for that client. There is no right or wrong. It's very possible that any mood board could work for any client. It just really depends on the type of design and feel for the space you want to create. Keep in mind that this mood board will drive not only your furniture selections, your material selections rather. It will also dictate the overall layout and feel of your entire presentation. Thinking about font, color, margins, and general appearance. So it's very important that they all look connected and work as a group. So much like your mood boards, where each board has a focal point, composition, but they also need to work together. It's very important. And so you also need to think about, how would these be displayed if they were going to be, put up on a wall? Are they vertical, horizontal, in a grid? This is all, all the kind of things we need to be thinking about. So, taking a closer look at the requirements and then the examples. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit. All right, and I'm going to come over. So this person chose their fun, lively, invigorating mood board, and you can see that throughout the additional boards for this project. So their new first 15 by 15 board is all about the project and the concept. So you'll see they have information about the exterior of the building and the location. They discuss their concept statement and give us some information about the client and their needs. Now, realistically, this could be briefer. We don't need to have, a ton of text on our board, so this actually could be a little bit shorter. Nicely done, but could be a little bit shorter. Looking here at the perspective drawing, so you're all given that empty shell for your perspective drawing that shows you a generic room. Well, this is where you get to be creative and use your VC1 drawing skills. You get to articulate all of the architectural elements of this space and draw them. So you don't necessarily have to create a grid for your perspective drawing. You can do, kind of eyeball it a little bit more. But you're going to be designing and articulating the floors, walls, windows, doors, ceiling elements, and really creating a unique living space for your client. Please note that there's no furniture in these spaces, so you don't have to draw the sofas, chairs, rugs, anything like that. It's really everything that's permanently affixed in the room, including, flooring, built-in millwork, the fireplace, that kind of information. So it's really important that we think about line type, line weight, creating this sense of depth and texture and showing materials, but you don't necessarily have to draw, anything that's movable. It's all about the architecture of the space. Moving down here, you'll see there's then the furniture and fixtures board, and then the materials and finishes board here. So with the furniture, we're going to be selecting this all out digitally. So you'll have your sofas, chairs, artwork, lights, and so on, all laid out. This person, chose to go into Photoshop, cut each piece of furniture out. That's something you can absolutely do. You're not necessarily required. Depends on your comfort level with Photoshop, but it is, of course, a really great look. So you'll see the imagery, right? Then take note of what we have up at the top. So on the left here, where we have the A, B, C, D, that's the coding map that's referred to in the requirements. And then this right here, to the right of that in the green, is the schedule. And you'll see the same thing happens over here on the material board. So we have all the materials, the coding map, and the schedule. So the schedule is basically a table, and you just list out the important information. And the requirements are listed in the assignment, which you'll see you list the item, whether it's a dining chair, a ceiling light, whatever it might be. Then you'll list out, the information, so the manufacturer, that type of thing, okay? Same is true for the materials. The requirements are listed in the assignment right here. So for furniture and materials, you'll see it says code, ABC, item, manufacturer, name and product number, material code 123, item, manufacturer, product number. So keep it super simple, okay? This is just to record information. And so this information is what you give to a client if they're, curious, like who makes that sofa? What are the dimensions or whatever? And then later this information is, used to order things, or for example, with the materials, you might tell the contractor, this is a wood floor, it's this manufacturer, this is where you can find it. So it's just, presenting technical information. Since we're doing presentation boards for a client, right, so this whole assignment's about designing a space and getting the client excited and presenting to them. We don't need to get overly technical. So keep it really simple and graphically pleasing on your boards. Some of the examples get a little more intense, but we want these to look good and just be a smaller part of the boards, right? So we want to tell the client the information, but do it really nicely in an interesting way. And this person did a great job. So each item gets its own code. So A is the dining chair, B is the ceiling light, and so on, okay? So then we have to figure out a way to label the items on the boards, right? So how do I label this sofa, this chair? There's many ways to do it, but the way I'd like you to do it for this assignment is actually to create a coding map. So these can have different looks, but this person did a nice job of creating a graphic representation of their board and then labeling. So D, I can see here on this pink square, that correlates to D, this pink sofa. And if I look at the schedule, I see D, sofa, it's pink from, it says Porter Sectional Row of Concepts, for example. If I go up here to B, I see, it's the ceiling light, it's white. So it all connects. So the image to the coding map to the code, and that's how we can communicate our information. So we'll do the same thing over here on the materials, right? So we have our coding map and our schedule for the materials. So I see A, paint, it's Ashwood Gray, it's on the ceiling, and it's a Benjamin Moore. Okay, so if I look up here, I see, here's A, here's A, it's this blue paint, and so on, okay? It's just a really nice way to communicate. It's super neat and clean. And for this project, we don't have a ton of selections. It's a pretty limited amount of selections, both in terms of furniture and accessories, as well as materials. So it's a nice introduction of a really neat and clean way to do it. Okay, notice the materials are really dealing with the materials we'll have on the floor, like wood, tile, carpet. the walls and ceiling, paint, wall covering, then built-ins, wood, countertop material, maybe some additional, if there's, let's say, an upholstery they might want to change on a piece of furniture, or dealing with maybe drapes or something like that. So you don't have to pick out the materials for each and everything, but just the general architectural things that are in the room. Okay. So that is our first example, and that's the one I'll be the most thorough about in terms of discussion, but I think that really hits all of these required elements for this assignment. Okay, so here's our next example. Okay, very different in appearance, right, from the first example, much more kind of muted, neutral tones. This person used their balanced, peaceful, and calm mood board from part 1. And then integrated that general appearance, with those mountains and that skyline, into the background of the rest of their boards. So it has a similar but different look, right? And then laid them out, in a similar fashion. So we have our first board describing the project, the exterior of the building, the articulated perspective drawing, information about the client, the solution, the project brief, all on the first board. And then we have our furniture board and our material board. Okay, so how you choose to lay yours out and how you choose to label them and everything can change, right? Everybody can do things a little bit differently, but this is a really nice way to do it. We definitely want to include the title of the project. You want your name, the course, and the date, of course. But then how you handle things can vary a little bit. I would say for this particular person's project, they say furniture schedule, material schedule on the boards. Be careful about that, because the schedules are just the tables with the technical information. So it would have been better to say, furniture selections, or furniture, maybe material selections, or maybe materials, or something like perhaps the first student did, right? So be careful about your labeling. But otherwise, neatly and cleanly done, very organized. I'll zoom in here a little bit, and let's take a look at this perspective. So this perspective is very nicely done. You can see this person's is very different than the first example we looked at, right? Going for a totally different location, different vibe, different interiors. So they have a vaulted ceiling with wooden beams running up the ceiling, down the wall. A tiled, either wood or tile, I'm not sure, I'll have to look, floor that they, drew out that texture. They included their hanging metal fireplace, windows, and they really did a pretty good job at getting at some of those details, showing the depth of the windows and the trim, that type of thing. So again, no loose furniture, nothing like that, just the built-in elements. So what do you want to do to design the space? Okay, coming down here, looking at the furniture materials. So again, the furniture all cut out, and sort of, laid out in a kind of interesting way how the room might feel, and very neatly displayed materials. Again, pretty nice job on the schedule here. It blends in, it's not obtrusive, it doesn't dominate the board, which is super important. They have a little more information here than you're required, so please keep that in mind. Follow the assignment. Examples are never maybe precise, and the requirements from your years change, so just look at them as general examples. Don't get hung up on copying someone else, most certainly. You'll see that this person's example does not have the coding map that you are required to do this year, but just to point it out, they do label the individual pieces that correlates with the schedules on both the furniture and materials, so it's a little bit different. You'll also notice these are, as with the last one, physical, real samples of materials. We're not doing that this year, going to do everything digital, but just kind of pointing out that's why these are little cutout pieces of paper glued on top because they're actually physically glued on there. But you can see how maybe having that coding map could have helped this person out instead of having sort of a different look and it getting a little less neat and clean. Still a really nice project. Whoa, things really took a took a turn, right? So another invigorating, lively, fun project, right? So super colorful. And so this person really totally different, I would say, in a lot of ways than the last two. So with their mood board, they had gone kind of zany, kitschy, super colorful, and that carries through their project. Okay. I think, I think this is a really fun example. It probably gets a little bit disconnected with the different backgrounds, right? So it would have been helpful if perhaps this geometric type of shape that the student created, that you also see in this logo that they created, carried through a little bit more, but still fun, still I think a good example to get ideas generating. Okay, so you'll see same basic layout with the perspective, the project information and exterior here. Then the furniture and schedule and materials, right? Again, similar issue with the labeling. Okay, so think about that. Make sure you're not just calling out one thing on that board. We're, describing that whole board, right? Then, oops, if I just zoom in a little bit, take a look. Really interesting treatment of the perspective. I wanted to call your attention to this one. So they went for an A-frame type of design and really, took this perspective in a different direction, which I think is pretty cool. Articulating the floors, walls, ceiling, fireplace, showing some textures, what we even see out the window. Really unique. Very interesting. Okay. And then down here, just taking, one to the next one. There we go. Looking at, the furniture being cut out, overlaying these interesting shapes. So some interesting ideas, probably getting, again, just a bit disconnected, with the colors and those backgrounds, but some really nice ideas. This student chose to do their schedules in these sort of boldly colored tables, which is a way to go. I think, be careful that those don't dominate the board. We want them to become part of it, but I think that effort was made here. And it's a different approach than the others that we saw, which I think is important to see. Okay. Next student, okay, whole different vibe again. So if I take a look up at the top, okay, so you'll see that their mood board, had this very, almost, created a picture out of separate individual pictures. Very, very kind of earthy, natural, warm sunset kind of vibe. Okay. And if we take a look at the perspective, you'll see a great attention to detail. So they took that basic perspective you're given for this project, and they expanded out into this sort of sunroom, large tile floor, and then this whole built-in shelving system. And they fully articulated that in their drawing, created a vaulted ceiling with beams, showing all the materials around the fireplace, the fire and everything. So really nice job here. Okay, showing the project brief, where it's located, concept, and just having simple bullet points and saying, oh, this is in Prescott, Arizona. It's a population of 41,000 people. Safest city in Arizona. Giving that little information is fantastic. Okay. This person, as you can see, likes to draw, and included these types of handwritten looks and sketches in the back, which is always wonderful. And included graphics also that connect from one board to the next, which is a really nice touch. Okay. Oops. That keeps happening to me. Hang on. There we go. And, did a really nice job, I think, of creating clusters of the furniture here. And, connecting it to that schedule. So we're seeing the living room and the sofas on top of the rug, and creating that kind of grouping, even though it's not literal, right? But kind of grouping that furniture can be really telling, and seeing furniture touch the rug and, you know, that kind of a thing. The dining room here with the table, chairs, and light fixture. The craft space with a record player, showing that wall design, the chair, and so on. And then with the materials, you know, again, these are physical samples. You'll be working digitally, so it'll have a different look and feel. But you can do all sorts of really cool layering. You know, putting the materials in one area together versus another. You know, large in the background, smaller on top. And it's always ideal if we can do, you know, flooring underneath and those heavier, like literal flooring materials, and have whatever's touch each other. Really helps the client understand. These schedules, so these tables here are, you know, the furniture schedule, material schedule. They do a pretty good job, but these could be even, I think, more delicate. And you don't have to put this information, again, yours can be simpler because these are dominating the page a little bit. And we also do not have the key, the coding map rather, only on that first example. So please keep that in mind, that the way you'll handle this will be a little bit different, but still a great example. And then just a couple more. I thought it was important to show that not all of the examples were put together in that sort of squared format. Some people in the past have chosen to do like a vertical or a horizontal layout. These are, the last couple are pictures that were, you know, of the boards up on the wall. So they're a little fuzzy, you know, not a true, I think, rendition of the colors, and they're a little blurry, but it still gives you an idea of the student project, which I think is super helpful. So we have the mood board here, and then, you know, the perspective, the exterior, the project information. Then we have the furniture and materials. So just going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so you'll see it is a little bit blurry. Sorry about that, but I really like how this student handled including the information. So here we have an icon of, oh, it's in Puget Sound, Washington. The client with that icon is the Taylors. You know, they like the earthy eclectic style. Medium budget, right, with the $2 signs, you know, durable. That's really cool. So, you know, kind of think about that. Like, how do you present information? Sure, we can type everything out, but how can you do it visually, make it easier to understand and faster, especially on a presentation board? So that's a nice little tip. Okay, then looking at the perspective here, again, you can see how totally different this space feels, starting with that same basic drawing, and doing a really nice job articulating the materials, the ceiling, the depth of the windows, and then the interaction between this living room space and then the dining room beyond. So some of these students really, really got into altering the space, and I highly encourage you to do that. Then just looking over here, taking a look at this material board, you know, cutting all the furniture out in Photoshop and doing that layered effect and clustering, you know, the sofa, rug, chairs, and so on here. Then kind of the sitting area and how that furniture interacts. This furniture has a really nice look, you know, paying attention to the layout on this board. And then you can see the schedule down below. And how they've handled the project title, the student's name, date, and so on. So nice handling of the schedule again. It's crisp, clear, easy to understand, but doesn't dominate the page visually. Again, they did not do a coding map that you're required to do this year, but it's still an overall really nice example. And then same thing here with the materials, right? Again, these are physical samples. Yours will be different, but it gives you an idea of the completed project. Last example, I know this one was talked about a lot when we met, just kind of that idea of creating this geometric format that carried through. And I thought it was really important to see, how the student connected not only the mood board, but then the mood board connects literally from one to the next to the next to the next, which was, hard to figure out. Again, this is a picture from a physical, these were pinned up on the wall, so the quality of the image itself isn't great, but the quality of the project is really wonderful. So, please take a look at this and really look at the nuances of, splitting up those shapes, having the, images go from one to the other, including the project brief, the concept statement within these shapes. Really interesting way to handle it. If I zoom in just a tad, it's a little bit blurry, but we get the spirit of it, right? You can see that, again, there were physical little pieces of paper on the materials that correlate to the codes on the schedules. We don't need to do that. A, because we're doing everything digitally, but B, you're creating that coding map again. And then if we come over here to the last board, you can see that, she laid things out just a little bit differently than others, but, very unique layout, really interesting. And, she has her perspective here indicating the materials, the location of the fireplace, windows. She actually included this big mirror on the wall, the big changes to the ceiling, and everything, once again, with that hand-drawn perspective. So, as you're looking at this, be thinking about your client, their location, their needs, their personalities, and what mood board is the most appropriate. Building from that mood board, you'll take a look at that floor plan for informational purposes only, and you'll start thinking about how you want to articulate this three-dimensional perspective drawing and design a space. You'll be selecting materials, furniture, and accessories that all combine to make this wonderful space for your client, and you'll include the technical information through schedules and coding maps on your board to help describe to your client, what's what. Okay, so that's the complete part 2 of this project, taking our mood board and then designing a wonderful residential living space for your given client.